So in the last video, we had just finished talking about the process I went through to get the PDF links that I needed, and also creating a folder in the working directory to download and setting that as a new working directory to download all the PDFs into that folder. So in this video, I'll be going through the primary web scraping portion of my project. And since most of the data was in PDFs, it's primarily focused on PDF data extraction. So in this, the format I'll be following is that for the primary functions I've written in my code, I'll briefly show you the code within R, and then I have a breakdown of it within the slide deck. So just a forewarning, it'd be a good idea to, if you have a lot of PDFs that you are downloading, it can be a good idea just to ensure, just to check the spacing prior to starting this, because here's just an example of some of the data I needed to get, and just because this PDF was slightly offset in the spacing, this was the result of the first PDF, whereas this was a table created by the second one. So this one was quite easy to work with. These are the two pieces of data I needed. And this one, it was very difficult to decipher. And generally speaking, trial and error is part of the process. I experienced many errors myself when I was trying to work through the project, so don't be discouraged. And if you do write a function to automate the data extraction process for multiple PDFs, you may encounter one or two files, generally speaking, where due to spacing issues or new line characters or escape characters that exist, the function will give out an error. So in those cases, you can either choose to write a separate function for those files that you're getting an error if you from the original function, or you can manually import the data depending on how many files fall into that category. If it's only one or two, it's probably going to be easier just to manually input the data into R. If there's a couple, maybe 5 or 6, you may be better off writing a function. For the 2013 financial statement year, the data I needed was contained in a different table, so I needed to extract the data in a different way as compared to the other years. I'll just quickly show you the tables that I needed to extract the information from. So the first table has 3 relevant columns, and it just contains the provincial revenue received by the Calgary Board of Education from 2004 to 2013. And the second table I need to get the information from was this one, where it just has the enrollment figures in the last row and the fiscal year. So going back to the R code, here I'm just downloading the PDF file. Just make sure that you set the mode parameter to WB, because which I believe stands for binary. It's just how the tells the function how to download the file. Because if you don't, if you just leave this, if you don't specify this parameter, the PDF you get may have some blank pages. And so then I use the PDF text function, which returns a character vector where every element of that vector represents one page. And I decided to go look at the table of contents to locate the relevant pages within the PDF to apply the extract tables function to. So just jumping back to the slide deck really quickly. The general process I followed was to load the table of contents, clean the table of contents. So there's a lot of periods that I need to clean up to be able to locate the number. And so after I removed all these periods, I would find the relevant page number and then apply the extract tables function to that to those pages. So just going back to the code. This is just what I'm doing here with the gsub function, where I'm removing the periods and replacing them with nothing so that it's easier to read. Alright, sorry about that. I just had to load up that PowerPoint again. So after I had cleaned up the financial statement with the GSUB function, if I just go back to the PowerPoint, I was able to locate that the pages were on the tables were on page 70 and 72, and this is the extract tables function that gave the tables. Um, I did have to offset the page numbers by 2 because the table of content itself was on the second page. So that's just something you have to keep in mind. And then I got it. This returns a list of tables. So the first one was for the provincial contribution, and second one was for student enrollment values. And I'll just quickly show you how these data frames are. So this is the student enrollment figures. It has empty columns, blank columns that I needed to remove, and the provincial contributions. It was formatted a bit awkwardly, because the years were spread out over two rows, similarly with the funding. And to deal with that, firstly, I'll just look at dealing with the provincial contributions. So I only needed the first 4 rows of data. So I specified that I brought that back into the provincial contribution data frame, and then I removed the second column and fourth row because they were just empty. And within this function, what I did was iterated through each row of the data frame, and I removed any dollar signs and commas so that the funding values were in a readable format for analysis, and then return those values with this function. And then this is just the functions getting called and me just appending them the data that's returned and putting it into a data frame. So I'll just get into the first key function that I had, which was the extract enrollment function. And this takes a PDF link, the PDF name. Both of these are strings and the relevant year. So within all the PDFs, there was this string. This is just an example where it said enrollment for the given school year increased to, and then it had the actual student enrollment figures and the increase. So to build up the string for all the years, I just created 2 vectors to have the years, so the full years and part years. And then I just iterated through a for loop and built up the relevant string. So once I had the string and located the page where the string was located in using the PDF text download file, then the PDF text function, and then locating the relevant string, to locate the relevant page, I use a grepl function. So use the enrollment strings, since it would be hard to know which specific, as any of the financial statement years, financial statement PDFs could be passed into it. The way to locate the relevant year would be I just use the enrollment strings and collapse them with this divider, and then use them with the grepl function. So all those strings that we created on the previous page, if any of them were located within the PDF, it would enter the body of the loop. And just going back to the last page, you can see that the student enrollment figures are three digits followed by a comma followed by 3 digits. And so this is what I'm doing here to extract that. I use a sub extract function, a string extract function. So digits, and then this specifies a number of specific digits. There's a comma, and then there's 3 more digits. I also remove the commas after extracting that string and replace them with nothing, just so it's easier to work with them later on. And once I had the number, I would return the relevant year, the exact enrollment value, and the increase value as well. For the second function, it was to extract the funding, which was within balance sheet or a condensed income statement. And so to locate the relevant pages, these are just two of the years, and they do follow a different pattern. So this this table of contents was easier to work with because the page that was where the table was on, this one, um, the issue with both of these is that they reset the pages. So even if I located the relevant page where the financial statements were located on, I then had to find the last page within the table of contents with the FS in it, and then I had to offset the table of content page, uh, the relevant page for the financial statements, and then add another two pages to get to the correct table. So this is just simply locating the within the table of contents. I'm locating AD and A or MD and A, and then whichever subheading within the table of contents contained these was the relevant one that contained the financial statement table. And so once I got the financial statement table, I also had to clean up the data. So the process I went through was um, identify the relevant data frame row and column using the grepl function right here. And then since all of them started out with a million, and this was the first value, that's how I located that. And then I removed the comma and dollar signs right here, because to enable the better data analysis later on, you need to remove any of these escape sequences. And then this was the return of the function as well. And so using those two functions on all the PDF links that we had identified in the previous video, this was the final overall data frame that I had. And to export that out of R, you can use a write.csv function, and this would be the data frame name that's here, and the name that you want to name the CSV, that's the second parameter, and this will be saved to your working directory as well. To get the diploma marks, I created a separate function for that, and so this is how the PDF looks. The numbers I wanted were these two, where the mean diploma marks for the CBE and the province. When I applied the extract tables function on the diploma exams, this is the table I would get. And so as you can see, the last two values correspond with these two values, and these were the two I wanted, though they're not in a separate column. So to get these ones, this was a general pseudocode for it, which was iterate. I use a nested for loop to iterate cell by cell and row by row. And then I use a string split whenever there was a number. So in whichever cells using regular expressions I identified numbers, I string split wherever there was a space, and then I kept a counter of numeric values. So if I just go back to the previous page, you can see that there's 8 numbers here, and the last number corresponds to the data we want. So I kept a counter, and going through each row cell by cell, when we would reach when the counter would reach 8, it would save that number, and it would do this for the first 2 rows. So after the first 2 rows, we went through the first 2 rows, the function would just exit, because the first 2 rows with the 8 numbers, those ones were contain the relevant data. And so I'll just jump back into the R code very quickly just to show you how this was actually implemented. This is the actual function I'd written. As you can see, it was following a similar pattern where I had to first locate which the diploma mark related which subject the diploma mark was related to, and I just use the grepl function for that. And this was just the earlier on was just downloading the table, and I had to follow a separate process. So this function was for 20 years 2015 onwards. For years that were slightly before that, so for 2013, the format was different, and generally speaking, or the overall process was the same, but I just had to slightly modify the function. So I copy pasted it and I removed some of the parts and modified some of the parts to fit with that relevant year. Also, if you're downloading these PDFs, you may have to put this function into your loops, because if you're sending too many requests to a specific website, you may start receiving connection errors. So just put a for loop into it, put this function within the for loop, and this will save you a lot of headache if you do start experiencing these issues. Similarly, you can see that I have this is sleep function here, and this is for diploma results from 2015 onwards. And so that's pretty much my code. Obviously, it's not very clean, and as you can see, you have to modify the code a lot for slight intricacies in each different PDF. I would still say that if you can follow the general steps I mentioned earlier, I'll just pull up the slide deck again quickly. Don't apply the extract tables function on the entire PDF, because the runtime complexity would be quite high if the PDF is quite long. So generally speaking, just load the table of contents, clean the table of contents to remove all the periods, locate the relevant pages, and then apply the extract tables function on that. Once you have extracted the relevant tables, you can write a function depending on how each table works out and ends up being imported into our by the extract tables function. You can just pass that table to a custom function that you write to clean up all the relevant data that you need, and put it into a final data frame. So thank you for following along for the web scraping process, and in the next video I'll just briefly cover how to get the data that you have in R, how to export that out of R, and open it up in whatever data visualization software you want to use, whether that's Tableau or if you prefer Excel. I'll go over that in the next video. Thank you for listening.